For over 100 years, one criminal organization has dominated global drug trafficking with such ruthless efficiency that they've generated more wealth than most Fortune 500 companies, while maintaining operational security that makes the CIA look like amateurs. They've corrupted governments, controlled international shipping, and built criminal enterprises that span 5 continents. The Sicilian Mafia, specifically Cosa Nostra, doesn't just run organized crime. They invented modern drug trafficking, pioneered international money laundering, and created the template that every criminal organization worldwide has copied for a century. Their drug empire has generated an estimated $500 billion in profits while establishing Sicily as the unofficial capital of global narcotics trafficking. We're talking about an organization that has outlasted empires, survived world wars, and adapted to every technological change while maintaining the same basic structure that enabled them to control drug trafficking from the 1920s to today. They've transformed from Sicilian peasant rebels into the most sophisticated criminal enterprise in history. The numbers are staggering in every dimension. Cosa Nostra controlled 80% of heroin entering the United States during the 1960s and 1970s. They laundered billions through legitimate businesses while corrupting officials at every level of government. They eliminated thousands of competitors, witnesses, and law enforcement officers while maintaining omertà, the code of silence, that protected their operations for generations. But here's what makes their story absolutely incredible. They achieved this dominance not through random violence or crude intimidation, but through sophisticated business strategies, international networking, and institutional arrangements that rival any multinational corporation. The Sicilian Mafia operates like a criminal state within the Italian state. Their drug trafficking empire wasn't built overnight. It was constructed systematically across 4 generations of careful expansion, technological adaptation, and strategic partnerships with criminal organizations worldwide. They created the French Connection, managed the Pizza Connection, and pioneered cocaine trafficking decades before Colombian cartels became household names. The Sicilian Mafia didn't just participate in drug trafficking, they created the modern international drug trade through innovations in smuggling techniques, money laundering systems, and corruption networks that enabled unprecedented scale and geographic reach. Their organizational structure combines medieval secrecy with modern business efficiency. Cosa Nostra families operate through elaborate initiation rituals, blood oaths, and honor codes that create loyalty and operational security while maintaining flexibility that enables adaptation to changing law enforcement strategies and market conditions. Sicily became the strategic center for international drug trafficking because of its geographic position, historical experience with contraband smuggling, and cultural traditions that protected criminal enterprises from government interference. The island provided the perfect base for controlling Mediterranean drug routes while maintaining connections to North America and South America. Today, despite decades of law enforcement pressure and internal conflicts that killed thousands of mafiosi, Cosa Nostra continues operating international drug trafficking networks while adapting to contemporary challenges, including digital surveillance, international cooperation, and competition from newer criminal organizations. This is the untold story of how Sicilian peasants built the world's most successful criminal empire, how they created international drug trafficking as we know it today, and how their methods continue influencing organized crime across the globe while maintaining operational capabilities that enable continued dominance in international narcotics trafficking. What the Sicilian Mafia accomplished wasn't just criminal success, it was the creation of parallel state institutions that could compete with legitimate governments while establishing Sicily as the nerve center for criminal activities that generate more profits than most national economies. To understand how the Sicilian Mafia built their 100-year drug empire, you need to understand what Sicily was like in the early 1900s. A feudal island controlled by absentee landlords, violent peasant rebels, and a weak central government that couldn't maintain order across rugged terrain that provided perfect conditions for criminal organizations. Sicily in 1900 was essentially a failed state, where legitimate government authority barely extended beyond major cities, leaving vast rural areas under the control of private armies, bandit groups, and emerging criminal organizations that provided security, enforced contracts, and collected taxes through violence and intimidation. The collapse of feudalism during the 19th century had created a power vacuum where traditional aristocrats could no longer control their estates, while newly wealthy middle-class landowners lacked the military capabilities necessary to protect their properties from bandits, peasant rebels, and competing landowners. This environment created opportunities for armed groups that could provide protection services, enforce property rights, and mediate disputes through violence rather than legal institutions that were either absent or controlled by competing interests that couldn't provide reliable security or contract enforcement. The gabolotti, estate managers who controlled large agricultural properties, needed reliable enforcers who could collect rents, prevent theft, and maintain order among agricultural workers who had few legal protections and many grievances against landowners who exploited them systematically. These estate managers hired groups of armed men who became known as koshe, the plural of koska, meaning artichoke, referring to the tight-knit structure of criminal groups that protected their members while maintaining secrecy and operational security through family connections and personal loyalty. The koshi evolved from simple protection rackets into sophisticated criminal organizations that controlled specific territories, taxed all economic activity within their domains, and provided alternative governmental services, including dispute resolution, contract enforcement, and security provision that the official government couldn't provide effectively. Palermo, Sicily's capital, became the center for criminal coordination as rural koshe needed urban connections to sell agricultural products, launder criminal proceeds, and influence government officials who controlled licensing, taxation, and law enforcement that affected criminal operations. The unification of Italy in 1860 created additional opportunities for criminal expansion as the new Italian state attempted to impose control over Sicily through military occupation and administrative reforms that local populations resisted, while criminal organizations provided alternative governance structures. Italian law enforcement focused on political rebels and separatists, while largely ignoring criminal organizations that claimed to support Italian unification and provided information about anti-government activities in exchange for operational freedom and protection from police interference. The economic opportunities were substantial because Sicily's agricultural wealth, strategic Mediterranean location, and weak government created ideal conditions for contraband smuggling, tax evasion, and protection rackets that could generate enormous profits for organized criminal groups. Emigration to North America during the early 1900s created international connections as Sicilian immigrants maintained family and business relationships with relatives who remained in Sicily, creating networks that would prove crucial for international criminal expansion during the following decades. The Sicilian Mafia that emerged from this environment wasn't a single organization, but rather a collection of independent criminal groups, families or famigli, that controlled specific territories while maintaining loose coordination through shared cultural codes, business relationships, and strategic alliances. Each mafia family operated autonomously within its territory, while recognizing the territorial rights of other families and coordinating activities that required cooperation, such as large-scale contraband operations, political corruption, and conflict resolution between competing families. The organizational structure combined elements of medieval guilds, military units, and business partnerships, while maintaining secrecy through initiation rituals, blood oaths, and codes of honor that created strong internal loyalty while protecting operational security from law enforcement infiltration. Omerta, the code of silence, became the foundation for mafia operational security, requiring members to resolve disputes internally, never cooperate with law enforcement, and maintain absolute secrecy about criminal activities even when facing imprisonment or death. The honor code created powerful incentives for loyalty while establishing clear hierarchies, territorial boundaries, and behavioral expectations that enabled coordination between autonomous family groups without central command structures that could be detected and disrupted by law enforcement. Women played crucial support roles in mafia operations, while being formally excluded from membership, providing safe houses, carrying messages, and maintaining family businesses that served as fronts for criminal activities while remaining outside law enforcement focus. The Catholic Church's influence in Sicilian society provided cultural legitimacy for mafia activities through shared emphasis on family loyalty, honor, and resistance to outside authority, while some clergy provided active support for criminal organizations that claimed to protect traditional values. Political connections became essential for mafia survival, as criminal organizations needed protection from law enforcement, favorable treatment in court proceedings, and advance warning of police operations, while politicians needed mafia support for electoral victories and personal security. The economic foundation for early mafia power came from controlling agricultural markets, providing protection services, and managing contraband smuggling operations that took advantage of Sicily's geographic position and weak customs enforcement to generate substantial profits. By 1920, the Sicilian Mafia had evolved into a sophisticated criminal system, with territorial control, international connections, and institutional arrangements that would enable them to dominate global drug trafficking for the following century, while adapting to changing political conditions and technological developments. The foundation that emerged from Sicily's unique historical conditions created organizational capabilities that would prove ideally suited for international drug trafficking: territorial control, operational secrecy, international connections, and institutional flexibility that enabled rapid adaptation to new criminal opportunities. Understanding this historical foundation is essential for recognizing how the Sicilian Mafia could transition from local protection rackets to global drug trafficking, while maintaining organizational coherence and operational effectiveness across multiple generations and technological revolutions. The transformation from Sicilian peasant rebels to international drug traffickers represents one of the most successful organizational adaptations in criminal history, where traditional institutions were systematically modified to exploit emerging opportunities in global contraband trafficking, while preserving essential features that enabled continued operational success. Chapter 1: Sicilian Roots. The origins of what would become the world's most powerful drug trafficking organization can be traced to the blood-soaked hills of western Sicily in the 1870s, where competing criminal families developed organizational structures, territorial control systems, and codes of conduct that would later enable them to dominate international narcotics trafficking for over a century. The Corleonesi, who would eventually become synonymous with Sicilian Mafia power, emerged from the agricultural town of Corleone as particularly ruthless and ambitious criminals who used systematic violence to eliminate competitors while expanding their territorial control beyond traditional boundaries that limited other mafia families. Salvatore Riina's family, though not yet powerful in the late 1800s, represented the type of rural Sicilian criminal organization that would eventually dominate international drug trafficking through their willingness to use unlimited violence while maintaining operational discipline and strategic thinking that exceeded other criminal groups. The early mafia families developed sophisticated territorial control systems where each family claimed exclusive authority over specific geographic areas while taxing all economic activity within their domains, creating sustainable revenue streams that funded expansion and provided economic security for family members. Protection rackets became the foundation for mafia economic power as families demanded payments from businesses, agricultural estates, and commercial operations in exchange for security from theft, vandalism, and competition, while providing genuine protection services that weak government institutions couldn't offer. The pizzo, protection money, created steady income streams that enabled mafia families to maintain armed groups, corrupt government officials, and invest in legitimate businesses that provided cover for criminal activities while generating additional revenue through business operations and money laundering. Territorial boundaries between families were enforced through violence and negotiation, creating stable, geographic divisions that prevented destructive conflicts while enabling each family to maximize revenues within their domains without interference from competing criminal organizations. The commission system, which would later become famous through American prosecutions, originated in Sicily as a method for coordinating activities between autonomous mafia families while resolving disputes, allocating territory, and organizing large-scale criminal operations that required cooperation. Initiation rituals created powerful bonds between family members while establishing clear hierarchies, behavioral expectations, and loyalty requirements that enabled effective coordination within families while maintaining operational security against law enforcement infiltration and competing criminal organizations. The ritual of making one's bones, proving oneself through murder, created psychological commitments that made betrayal extremely difficult while demonstrating the willingness to use violence that was essential for criminal success in environments where legal institutions provided no protection for criminal agreements. Blood oaths and sacred ceremonies combined religious symbolism with criminal commitment, creating emotional and spiritual bonds that transcended economic relationships, while establishing cultural foundations for lifelong loyalty that proved crucial for long-term organizational survival. Family honor codes required members to avenge insults, protect family reputation, and maintain dignity through violence when necessary, creating cultural imperatives that reinforced criminal solidarity while establishing behavioral standards that governed internal relationships and external interactions. The vendetta system institutionalized revenge while creating cycles of violence that eliminated weak families while strengthening those with superior organizational capabilities and strategic thinking that enabled them to survive and expand despite constant internal and external pressures. Women in mafia families played crucial but largely invisible roles, maintaining family businesses that served as fronts for criminal activities while raising children according to mafia values and providing intelligence-gathering capabilities that male members couldn't access through their social networks. Marriage alliances between mafia families created political and business partnerships while strengthening territorial arrangements and reducing conflicts through kinship connections that made violence between allied families both economically costly and culturally problematic. The Catholic Church's complex relationship with mafia families provided cultural legitimacy, while some clergy offered practical support for criminal activities that were perceived as protecting traditional Sicilian values against foreign interference from northern Italian authorities and modernizing influences. Political corruption became systematic as mafia families recognized that controlling local government provided protection from law enforcement while enabling favorable treatment in legal proceedings and advance warning of police operations that could threaten criminal activities. Electoral violence ensured that mafia-supported candidates won political offices, while demonstrating the consequences of opposing mafia interests to politicians who might consider independent political action that could threaten criminal operations or territorial control. The agricultural foundation of early mafia power created economic relationships with large landowners who needed protection services while providing legitimate cover for criminal activities through estate management and agricultural commerce that could explain wealth accumulation and business relationships. Cattle rustling, extortion, and smuggling operations provided training in criminal techniques that would later prove essential for drug trafficking, including territorial control, violence management, corruption networks, and international smuggling routes that connected Sicily to European and North African markets. The geographic advantages of Sicily became apparent as mafia families developed smuggling operations that exploited the island's strategic Mediterranean position, numerous secluded harbors, and weak customs enforcement to move contraband between Europe and North Africa while maintaining operational security. International connections developed through emigration created crucial networks in North America, as Sicilian immigrants maintained family and business relationships with relatives who remained in Sicily, establishing communication and support systems that would enable future criminal expansion. The American connection provided opportunities for sharing criminal techniques, coordinating international operations, and accessing new markets, while Sicilian families learned about American criminal opportunities and American criminals learned about Sicilian organizational methods and operational security. By 1920, the Sicilian Mafia had developed organizational capabilities that would prove ideally suited for international drug trafficking, territorial control systems, corruption networks, violence management capabilities, international connections, and operational security measures that could protect large-scale criminal enterprises from law enforcement detection and disruption. The foundation built during the late 1800s and early 1900s created institutional arrangements that could adapt to new criminal opportunities while maintaining essential features that enabled continued organizational survival despite changing political conditions, law enforcement pressures, and internal conflicts. The transition from agricultural protection rackets to international drug trafficking would require organizational evolution, but the basic institutional framework developed in Western Sicily provided the foundation for what would become the most successful criminal enterprise in modern history. Understanding these roots reveals how seemingly primitive criminal organizations could evolve into sophisticated international networks while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that provided competitive advantages over both law enforcement institutions and competing criminal organizations. The Sicilian origins of modern drug trafficking demonstrate how geographic, cultural, and historical factors can create organizational capabilities that enable criminal enterprises to achieve extraordinary success while adapting to changing conditions and expanding into new markets and criminal opportunities. Chapter 2: Prohibition Profits. The American Prohibition era from 1920 to 1933 provided Sicilian Mafia families with their first opportunity to demonstrate the international drug trafficking capabilities that would define their operations for the following century, as alcohol smuggling became the training ground for techniques that would later dominate heroin and cocaine trafficking. Prohibition created an enormous black market for alcohol that required exactly the skills Sicilian criminal organizations had developed through generations of contraband smuggling. International supply chains, corruption networks, violence management, and territorial control systems that could protect large-scale illegal operations from law enforcement interference. The Castellammarese War of 1930 to 1931 in New York demonstrated how Sicilian organizational methods could be adapted to American conditions while establishing the territorial arrangements and leadership structures that would enable systematic alcohol smuggling operations that generated unprecedented criminal profits. Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano, both Sicilian immigrants, fought for control of New York criminal activities using traditional mafia methods while establishing organizational structures that would survive Prohibition and evolve into drug trafficking networks that connected Sicily to American markets. Lucky Luciano's emergence as the dominant American mafia leader demonstrated how Sicilian criminal traditions could be modernized while maintaining essential features including omertà, territorial control, and commission-style coordination that enabled effective management of large-scale criminal enterprises. The commission system established by Luciano created coordination mechanisms between autonomous criminal families while preventing destructive conflicts that might attract law enforcement attention or reduce overall criminal profits through unnecessary violence and territorial disputes. Alcohol smuggling operations required sophisticated international logistics that prefigured later drug trafficking networks, secure communication systems, reliable transportation networks, corruption of customs officials, and coordination between criminal organizations in multiple countries. Canadian suppliers, Caribbean transshipment points, and European alcohol sources created international smuggling networks that demonstrated how criminal organizations could exploit different national jurisdictions while maintaining operational security through compartmentalized operations and trusted international partnerships. Speedboat operations off the Atlantic coast developed smuggling techniques that would later be adapted for drug trafficking, high-speed transportation, radar evasion, communication security, and coordination with onshore distribution networks that could move contraband rapidly from coastal entry points to urban markets. Corruption of law enforcement officials became systematic as Prohibition agents, customs officers, and local police were routinely bribed to ignore smuggling operations while providing advance warning of raids and investigations that might threaten criminal activities. The systematic corruption demonstrated how criminal organizations could neutralize law enforcement pressure through financial incentives while creating sustainable protection networks that enabled long-term criminal operations despite official government prohibition of their activities. Legitimate business fronts became essential for money laundering as criminal organizations invested alcohol smuggling profits in restaurants, construction companies, and other businesses that could provide legal explanations for wealth accumulation while enabling continued criminal operations through business networks. The integration of legitimate and criminal business operations created sustainable business models that could survive changes in law enforcement pressure while providing multiple revenue streams that reduce dependence on any single criminal activity that might be disrupted by police action. Labor union infiltration provided additional opportunities for criminal expansion as mafia families gained control over dock workers, truck drivers, and warehouse employees who could facilitate smuggling operations while providing legitimate employment for family members and criminal associates. The control of transportation infrastructure became crucial for large-scale smuggling operations, while creating ongoing criminal opportunities through extortion, theft, and racketeering that supplemented smuggling profits and provided sustainable revenue streams that could continue after Prohibition ended. Violence management became more sophisticated as criminal organizations developed techniques for eliminating competitors, enforcing discipline, and resolving disputes while minimizing law enforcement attention through careful target selection and operational security that protected family members from prosecution. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929 demonstrated both the effectiveness and limitations of criminal violence, while showing how excessive violence could attract unwanted law enforcement attention that threatened overall criminal operations and organizational security. Territorial arrangements between criminal families became more formal, as alcohol smuggling required coordination and cooperation that prevented destructive conflicts while maximizing overall profits through efficient market division and reduced competition. The establishment of defined territories and spheres of influence created stability that enabled long-term planning and investment while reducing violence that might attract law enforcement attention or disrupt profitable criminal operations through unnecessary conflicts. International coordination became essential as alcohol smuggling required cooperation between Sicilian, American, and Canadian criminal organizations while demonstrating how traditional mafia families could maintain control over international operations through trusted family connections. Communication security developed through coded messages, trusted intermediaries, and compartmentalized information sharing that protected operational details while enabling coordination of complex international smuggling operations that involved multiple criminal organizations and geographic jurisdictions. Money laundering techniques evolved rapidly as criminal organizations needed to manage enormous cash flows while providing legal explanations for wealth accumulation that could withstand scrutiny from law enforcement and tax authorities who monitored suspicious financial activities. Swiss bank accounts, offshore investment, and real estate purchases provided methods for protecting criminal proceeds while creating legitimate assets that could generate ongoing income and provide financial security for family members, even if criminal operations were disrupted. The end of Prohibition in 1933 forced criminal organizations to diversify into other illegal activities while maintaining the organizational structures, corruption networks, and international connections that had been developed during 13 years of systematic alcohol smuggling. Gambling, loan sharking, and labor racketeering provided alternative revenue streams, while criminal organizations maintained their operational capabilities and international networks in preparation for future criminal opportunities that would require similar skills and organizational arrangements. The transition from alcohol to drugs was logical because criminal organizations possessed exactly the capabilities required for international drug trafficking, supply chain management, corruption networks, violence capabilities, money laundering expertise, and international connections that could be adapted for narcotics operations. Prohibition had provided a 13-year training period that enabled Sicilian criminal organizations to perfect international smuggling techniques while building organizational capabilities that would prove essential for dominating global drug trafficking during the following decades. The profits generated during Prohibition provided capital for expansion into drug trafficking, while the organizational structures, corruption networks, and international connections established during the alcohol smuggling era created the foundation for building the most successful drug trafficking empire in history. Understanding how Prohibition shaped Sicilian Mafia capabilities reveals why these particular criminal organizations were uniquely positioned to dominate international drug trafficking, while other criminal groups lacked the combination of organizational structure, international connections, and operational experience necessary for large-scale narcotics operations. The lessons learned during Prohibition about international coordination, corruption management, violence control, and money laundering would prove essential for building drug trafficking networks that could operate across multiple continents while maintaining operational security and organizational coherence across generations. Chapter 3: Heroin Highway. The post-World War II transformation of the Sicilian Mafia into the dominant force in international heroin trafficking represents one of the most successful criminal adaptations in history, as traditional protection rackets evolved into sophisticated drug trafficking networks that connected Asian opium production to American consumption through Mediterranean smuggling routes. The French Connection, established during the 1950s, became the primary pipeline for heroin entering the United States through a complex network that moved raw opium from Turkey through Marseille laboratories to Sicilian distribution networks and American consumption markets, generating billions in profits while establishing Sicily as the strategic center for international drug trafficking. Marseille's role as a heroin processing center was crucial because French laboratories could convert Turkish opium into high-quality heroin, while French law enforcement provided minimal interference with criminal operations that generated substantial economic benefits for the local economy and political establishment. The Corsican Mafia controlled Marseille heroin production while maintaining cooperative relationships with Sicilian families who provided distribution networks and American connections that were essential for accessing lucrative North American drug markets, where demand was rapidly increasing. Lucky Luciano's deportation to Italy in 1946 created crucial leadership for expanding Sicilian involvement in international drug trafficking, while his American connections and criminal experience enabled coordination between Sicilian families and American distribution networks. Luciano's meetings with Sicilian Mafia leaders during the late 1940s and 1950s established operational frameworks for international heroin trafficking while creating commission-style coordination that prevented destructive competition and maximized overall profits through efficient market division. The Palermo Summit meetings of the 1950s established formal coordination between Sicilian families for international drug trafficking operations while creating territorial arrangements and profit-sharing agreements that enabled large-scale heroin smuggling without internal conflicts that might attract law enforcement attention. Salvatore Giuliano's death in 1950 eliminated a potential competitor for control over Sicilian criminal activities, while enabling traditional mafia families to consolidate control over international smuggling routes and establish systematic cooperation with French and American criminal organizations. Turkish opium production provided the raw materials for heroin manufacturing, while Turkish criminal organizations developed supply relationships with Sicilian traffickers who could provide access to European processing facilities and American distribution networks. The geographic advantages of Sicily became even more apparent during the heroin trafficking era, as the island's position in the central Mediterranean provided ideal conditions for coordinating shipments between Asian suppliers, European processors, and American distributors. Sicilian fishing boats and cargo vessels provided cover for drug smuggling operations, while legitimate maritime commerce enabled drug shipments to blend with normal commercial traffic between Mediterranean ports and American destinations. Palermo Airport became a crucial hub for drug trafficking, as Sicilian families developed relationships with airline personnel, customs officials, and cargo handlers who could facilitate heroin shipments while providing operational security through corruption and intimidation. The development of sophisticated smuggling techniques included hidden compartments in legitimate cargo, body packing by individual couriers, and coordination with maritime shipping operations that could move large quantities of heroin while maintaining plausible cover for international transportation. Corruption of Italian law enforcement became systematic as heroin profits provided enormous resources for bribing police officials, customs agents, and judicial authorities, while creating sustainable protection networks that enabled long-term drug trafficking operations. The Italian-American connection provided crucial distribution capabilities as Sicilian immigrants in New York, Philadelphia, and other American cities maintained family relationships that enabled trusted coordination of international drug trafficking operations. Joseph Bonanno's leadership of the Bonanno crime family demonstrated how traditional Sicilian organizational structures could be adapted for American drug trafficking while maintaining family loyalty and operational security that protected international heroin networks from law enforcement penetration. The Pizza Connection investigation of the 1980s revealed the extent of Sicilian control over American heroin distribution through legitimate businesses, including pizza restaurants that served as fronts for drug operations while providing money laundering capabilities and communication networks. Heroin profits enabled Sicilian families to expand their influence within Italian society, while corrupting political institutions and infiltrating legitimate businesses that provided additional criminal opportunities and enhanced operational security for drug trafficking operations. The reinvestment of drug profits in legitimate businesses created sustainable economic foundations that could support criminal organizations even if specific drug trafficking operations were disrupted by law enforcement action or international cooperation. Construction companies, agricultural enterprises, and commercial businesses provided employment for family members while generating legitimate income that supplemented drug trafficking profits and provided legal explanations for wealth accumulation. The development of international money laundering systems enabled Sicilian families to manage enormous drug trafficking profits while providing financial services that attracted other criminal organizations and created additional revenue streams through criminal banking operations. Swiss bank accounts, offshore corporations, and real estate investments provided methods for protecting drug trafficking proceeds while creating legitimate assets that could be inherited by future generations, even if criminal operations were eventually disrupted. Violence management became more sophisticated as heroin trafficking required eliminating competitors and enforcing discipline while maintaining operational security that prevented law enforcement attention that might disrupt profitable drug operations. The elimination of competitors through systematic assassination campaigns demonstrated how traditional mafia violence capabilities could be adapted for international drug trafficking while maintaining territorial control and operational discipline that was essential for long-term criminal success. Internal discipline through violence and intimidation ensured that family members maintained operational security, while the threat of death prevented betrayal and cooperation with law enforcement that might compromise international drug trafficking operations. The development of international criminal alliances enabled Sicilian families to coordinate with Turkish suppliers, French processors, and American distributors while maintaining overall control over drug trafficking operations through superior organizational capabilities and international connections. Communication security through coded messages, trusted intermediaries, and compartmentalized information sharing protected international drug trafficking operations while enabling coordination of complex smuggling operations that involved multiple criminal organizations and national jurisdictions. The adaptation of traditional Sicilian organizational structures for international drug trafficking demonstrated how cultural institutions could be modified for new criminal opportunities while maintaining essential features that provided competitive advantages over law enforcement institutions and competing criminal organizations. By 1970, Sicilian Mafia families had established themselves as the dominant force in international heroin trafficking, while controlling supply chains that connected Asian opium production to American consumption through European processing facilities and Mediterranean smuggling routes. The success of the heroin highway demonstrated how traditional criminal organizations could evolve into sophisticated international networks while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that enabled them to dominate global drug trafficking for decades despite increasing law enforcement pressure. Understanding how the heroin highway operated reveals the organizational innovations that enabled Sicilian families to dominate international drug trafficking while establishing Sicily as the strategic center for criminal activities that would influence global narcotics trafficking for the following half-century. The foundation established during the heroin trafficking era created capabilities that would enable Sicilian families to adapt to changing drug markets while maintaining their dominant position in international narcotics trafficking despite competition from Colombian cartels and other criminal organizations. Chapter 4. American Connection. The deep integration between Sicilian Mafia families and American organized crime created the most sophisticated international drug trafficking network in history, where family connections, cultural traditions, and organizational structures enabled seamless coordination between European suppliers and American distributors across multiple generations of criminal cooperation. The American Cosa Nostra families that emerged during Prohibition maintained direct family relationships with Sicilian relatives who had remained in Sicily, creating trusted communication networks and business partnerships that were essential for large-scale international drug trafficking operations that required absolute reliability and operational security. Ellis Island immigration records reveal extensive family connections between prominent American mafia figures and Sicilian mafia families, demonstrating how immigration patterns during the early 1900s created kinship networks that would later facilitate international criminal cooperation and drug trafficking coordination. Joseph Bonanno's autobiography reveals the systematic nature of Sicilian American criminal coordination, describing regular meetings between American family leaders and Sicilian bosses who coordinated territorial arrangements, resolved disputes, and planned international criminal operations, including large-scale heroin trafficking. The commission meetings that coordinated American mafia activities included regular consultation with Sicilian family representatives who participated in strategic planning while maintaining ultimate authority over international drug trafficking operations that connected European supply networks to American distribution systems. Carlo Gambino's leadership of the Gambino crime family demonstrated how Sicilian organizational principles could be adapted for American criminal operations while maintaining family loyalty and operational security that enabled successful international drug trafficking despite increasing law enforcement pressure. The Kiefover Committee hearings of the 1950s revealed extensive connections between American and Sicilian criminal organizations while documenting the scope of international coordination that enabled systematic drug trafficking operations between European suppliers and American distributors. Frank Costello's testimony and subsequent investigations revealed how American mafia families maintained ongoing relationships with Sicilian families through regular communication, financial transfers, and coordination of criminal operations that included heroin trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption. The Appalachian Meeting of 1957 demonstrated the extent of international coordination between American and Sicilian criminal organizations as family representatives from both sides of the Atlantic gathered to coordinate ongoing criminal operations and resolve territorial disputes that affected international drug trafficking. Law enforcement surveillance of the Appalachian Meeting revealed that many attendees had recent travel records to Sicily, while Sicilian family representatives had made corresponding trips to the United States, demonstrating ongoing coordination of international criminal operations. Salvatore Inzarrillo's leadership of the Passo di Rigano family created crucial connections with American criminal organizations while establishing operational frameworks for international heroin trafficking that connected Sicilian suppliers with American distributors through trusted family relationships. The Inzarillo family's American connections included relatives in New York and Philadelphia, who controlled significant portions of local drug distribution while maintaining direct family relationships, that enabled trusted coordination of international trafficking operations without law enforcement penetration. Cherry Hill Gambino family meetings during the 1960s and 1970s included regular participation by Sicilian family representatives who coordinated international drug trafficking operations while planning territorial arrangements and profit-sharing agreements that maximized overall criminal revenues. The Pizza Connection case revealed the extent to which legitimate American businesses served as fronts for international drug trafficking operations managed through coordination between Sicilian families and American criminal organizations that maintained direct family relationships. Catalano's leadership of the Sicilian faction within the Bonanno crime family demonstrated how traditional Sicilian organizational structures could operate within American criminal organizations while maintaining distinct identity and operational methods that reflected Sicilian cultural traditions and criminal practices. The Sicilian faction's control over international heroin trafficking within American crime families created ongoing tensions while demonstrating how cultural and organizational differences affected criminal cooperation between Sicilian and American criminal organizations. Gaetano Badalamenti's coordination of international heroin trafficking demonstrated how Sicilian family leaders could maintain overall control over drug trafficking operations while utilizing American distribution networks and legitimate business fronts for money laundering and operational security. The Badalamenti organization's use of legitimate businesses, including construction companies, restaurants, and import-export firms, provided cover for international drug trafficking while enabling money laundering operations that protected criminal proceeds from law enforcement detection. Communication security between Sicilian and American criminal organizations relied on trusted family members who served as couriers, while coded language and cultural references protected operational details from law enforcement surveillance and electronic monitoring. The use of Sicilian dialects and cultural codes provided additional communication security while enabling criminal coordination that was difficult for law enforcement agencies to understand even when electronic surveillance succeeded in recording conversations between criminal participants. Money laundering coordination between Sicilian and American criminal organizations enabled effective management of enormous drug trafficking profits while providing financial services that protected criminal proceeds through international banking relationships and offshore investment opportunities. Swiss banking relationships developed through Sicilian connections provided American criminal organizations with access to international money laundering capabilities, while Sicilian families gained access to American investment opportunities that could protect criminal proceeds from Italian law enforcement. The development of international criminal alliances enabled Sicilian families to coordinate with South American cocaine suppliers, while American criminal organizations provided distribution networks and money laundering capabilities that were essential for large-scale cocaine trafficking operations. Violence coordination between Sicilian and American criminal organizations enabled enforcement of international criminal agreements while eliminating competitors and maintaining discipline within international drug trafficking networks that required absolute loyalty and operational security. The assassination of Carmine Galante in 1979 demonstrated how international criminal coordination could eliminate threats to profitable drug trafficking operations while maintaining overall organizational stability that protected ongoing international criminal cooperation. The systematic elimination of potential informants and law enforcement threats required coordination between Sicilian and American criminal organizations, while demonstrating how traditional mafia violence capabilities could be adapted for protecting international drug trafficking operations. Political corruption coordination enabled Sicilian and American criminal organizations to influence law enforcement activities while obtaining advance warning of investigations and prosecutions that might threaten international drug trafficking operations. The corruption of American law enforcement officials through Sicilian intermediaries provided protection for international drug trafficking operations, while demonstrating how international criminal coordination could neutralize law enforcement pressure through systematic bribery and intimidation. Italian-American cultural institutions, including social clubs, religious organizations, and cultural associations, provided meeting places and communication networks that enabled ongoing coordination between Sicilian and American criminal organizations while maintaining operational security through legitimate activities. The utilization of cultural events and religious celebrations for criminal coordination demonstrated how traditional Italian cultural practices could provide cover for international criminal activities while maintaining family relationships that were essential for long-term criminal cooperation. Family intermarriage between Sicilian and American criminal organizations strengthened international criminal alliances while creating kinship networks that enhanced trust and operational security for large-scale international drug trafficking operations. Marriage alliances between prominent criminal families created ongoing obligations and support networks that reinforced international criminal cooperation while providing additional security against betrayal and law enforcement penetration that might threaten drug trafficking operations. The generational transmission of criminal relationships enabled sustained international cooperation across multiple decades, while younger family members maintained connections established by previous generations of criminal leaders who had created the foundation for international drug trafficking networks. Second and third generation criminal family members who maintained connections to both Sicilian and American criminal organizations provided continuity for international drug trafficking operations while adapting traditional criminal practices to contemporary law enforcement challenges and technological developments. By 1980, the American connection had created the most sophisticated international criminal network in history, while enabling Sicilian families to maintain overall control over global drug trafficking through family relationships and cultural traditions that provided competitive advantages over both law enforcement institutions and competing criminal organizations. The success of the American connection demonstrated how cultural traditions and family relationships could create sustainable competitive advantages for international criminal organizations, while enabling adaptation to changing law enforcement strategies and technological developments that affected criminal operations. Understanding the American connection reveals how traditional criminal organizations could evolve into sophisticated international networks while maintaining cultural identity and organizational structures that enabled them to dominate global drug trafficking despite increasing law enforcement pressure and international cooperation. Chapter 5. French Network. The French Connection represented the most sophisticated heroin trafficking operation in history, where Corsican criminal organizations collaborated with Sicilian Mafia families to create processing and distribution networks that supplied 80% of American heroin consumption while operating under the protection of French intelligence services and political institutions. Marseille became the heroin capital of the world during the 1950s and 1960s because French laboratories could process Turkish opium into high-quality heroin, while Corsican criminal organizations provided operational security and political protection that enabled large-scale drug manufacturing without interference from French law enforcement. The Corsican Mafia, known as the Unione Corse, controlled Marseille's criminal activities through territorial arrangements and family structures similar to the Sicilian Mafia, while maintaining distinct cultural identity and operational methods that reflected Corsican traditions and geographic advantages. Auguste Ricord's leadership of Marseille heroin operations demonstrated how traditional Corsican criminal organizations could evolve into sophisticated international drug trafficking networks while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that enabled effective coordination with Sicilian partners and American distributors. The collaboration between Corsican and Sicilian criminal organizations created unprecedented opportunities for international drug trafficking while combining Corsican processing expertise with Sicilian distribution networks and American consumption markets to generate enormous profits. French intelligence services maintained complex relationships with Corsican criminal organizations that provided information and operational support for intelligence activities in exchange for protection from law enforcement interference with drug trafficking operations that generated substantial economic benefits for Marseille. The SDECE, Service de Documentation Extérieure et de Contre-Espionnage, utilized Corsican criminal networks for intelligence operations in Southeast Asia and North Africa, while providing political protection that enabled continued drug trafficking operations without interference from French law enforcement agencies. Political protection for Marseille drug trafficking operations extended to the highest levels of French government, as politicians benefited from economic activity generated by drug processing, while Corsican criminal organizations provided electoral support and financial contributions that influenced French political processes. The relationship between Corsican criminal organizations and French colonial authorities in Southeast Asia created additional opportunities for drug trafficking, as colonial intelligence networks provided access to opium supplies, while political connections protected trafficking operations from law enforcement interference. Indochina War veterans who had developed relationships with Southeast Asian opium suppliers provided crucial connections for Marseille heroin operations, while their military experience and political connections enabled sophisticated smuggling operations that avoided law enforcement detection. Laboratory operations in Marseille achieved unprecedented sophistication, as Corsican chemists developed advanced heroin processing techniques that created high-purity products while maintaining operational security through industrial facilities that appeared to be legitimate chemical manufacturing operations. The conversion of Turkish morphine base into heroin required sophisticated chemical knowledge and specialized equipment, while Marseille laboratories developed production capabilities that could process tons of opium derivatives into finished heroin products for international distribution. Quality control systems ensured that Marseille heroin maintained consistent purity levels that commanded premium prices in American markets, while building brand reputation that enabled sustained market dominance despite competition from Asian and Latin American suppliers. Smuggling operations from Marseille utilized legitimate maritime commerce to conceal drug shipments, while Corsican criminal organizations developed relationships with shipping companies, port officials, and customs authorities that enabled systematic drug trafficking operations. Container shipping provided ideal cover for drug smuggling, as legitimate cargo could conceal heroin shipments, while established commercial relationships provided operational security and plausible explanations for international shipping activities. The development of specialized smuggling techniques included hidden compartments in cargo containers, false bottoms in shipping crates, and coordination with maritime crews who could manage drug shipments while maintaining legitimate shipping schedules and cargo manifests. Corruption of French customs officials became systematic, as drug trafficking profits provided enormous resources for bribing port authorities while creating sustainable protection networks that enabled long-term trafficking operations despite official government prohibitions. Money laundering through French banking institutions enabled effective management of drug trafficking proceeds, while legitimate business investments provided additional criminal opportunities and enhanced operational security for ongoing trafficking operations. French Riviera casinos provided money laundering opportunities, while luxury real estate investments enabled criminal organizations to protect trafficking proceeds through legitimate assets that could appreciate in value while providing ongoing income streams. The integration of legitimate and criminal business operations created sustainable economic foundations, while enabling criminal organizations to maintain operational capabilities even if specific trafficking operations were disrupted by law enforcement action. International coordination between French, Sicilian, and American criminal organizations required sophisticated communication systems while maintaining operational security that protected trafficking networks from law enforcement penetration and competitive intelligence gathering. Coded communication through legitimate business correspondence provided operational security, while trusted intermediaries enabled coordination of complex international trafficking operations that involved multiple criminal organizations and geographic jurisdictions. The decline of the French connection during the 1970s resulted from increasing American law enforcement pressure and French political changes that reduced protection for drug trafficking operations, while new supply routes through Mexico and Asia provided alternative sources for American heroin consumption. Operation Snowbird and other international law enforcement initiatives demonstrated increased cooperation between American and French authorities, while political changes in France reduced protection for Corsican criminal organizations that had previously operated with relative impunity. The arrest of Auguste Ricoeur in Paraguay and subsequent prosecutions of key French connection figures disrupted established trafficking networks while forcing criminal organizations to develop new supply routes and operational methods that could avoid enhanced international law enforcement cooperation. The transformation of global heroin markets during the 1970s included the emergence of Southeast Asian suppliers and Latin American trafficking organizations that challenged French supremacy in international heroin trafficking while offering alternative supply sources for American consumption markets. Despite the decline of classical French connection operations, Corsican criminal organizations maintained significant influence in international drug trafficking while adapting to new market conditions and law enforcement pressures that required operational modifications and strategic realignments. Contemporary Corsican criminal organizations continue operating international drug trafficking networks while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that reflect historical development patterns established during the height of the French Connection era. The legacy of French Connection operations influenced subsequent international drug trafficking developments, while demonstrating how criminal organizations could exploit political relationships and geographic advantages to create sophisticated international networks that dominated global drug markets. Modern drug trafficking operations continue utilizing techniques developed during the French Connection era, including laboratory processing, corruption networks, legitimate business fronts, and international coordination mechanisms that enabled unprecedented criminal success. The organizational structures developed through French Connection operations provided templates for contemporary international criminal networks while demonstrating how cultural traditions and family relationships could create sustainable competitive advantages for criminal organizations. Understanding the French network reveals how political protection and geographic advantages could enable criminal organizations to dominate international drug trafficking while creating operational models that influence subsequent criminal development and law enforcement challenges. The success of the French Connection demonstrated how international criminal cooperation could create sophisticated trafficking networks while exploiting political relationships and institutional weaknesses that enabled sustained criminal operations despite official government prohibition of drug trafficking. The lessons learned from French Connection operations continue influencing both criminal organizations and law enforcement agencies, while providing insights into how international drug trafficking networks develop operational capabilities and maintain competitive advantages across multiple jurisdictions and political systems. Chapter 6: Pizza Connection. The Pizza Connection case of the 1980s revealed the most extensive international heroin trafficking operation in history, where Sicilian Mafia families used a network of pizza restaurants across America as fronts for drug distribution, while laundering over $1.6 billion in proceeds through sophisticated financial networks that connected 3 continents. The investigation, which lasted from 1975 to 1987, exposed how traditional Sicilian Mafia families had adapted their organizational structures for modern international drug trafficking while maintaining cultural traditions and family loyalty systems that enabled coordination across multiple countries and law enforcement jurisdictions. Gaetano Badalamenti's leadership of the trafficking network demonstrated how Sicilian Mafia bosses could coordinate international drug operations while maintaining traditional family structures and territorial arrangements that prevented internal conflicts and protected operational security from law enforcement penetration. The network operated through legitimate pizza restaurants in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and other states, where Sicilian immigrants could maintain cultural authenticity while providing perfect cover for drug distribution operations that required frequent customer interactions and cash transactions. Pizza restaurants provided ideal business fronts because they required large amounts of cash for daily operations, while frequent deliveries and customer visits created opportunities for drug distribution that appeared to be normal commercial activities, requiring no special explanations or suspicious behavior. The cultural authenticity of Sicilian-owned pizza restaurants enabled criminal organizations to maintain ethnic solidarity while employing trusted family members and associates who shared cultural values and understood omertà requirements that protected operational security from law enforcement infiltration. Salvatore Catalano's role as the American coordinator demonstrated how traditional Sicilian family structures could be adapted for American criminal operations while maintaining direct connections to Sicilian bosses who retained ultimate authority over international trafficking decisions and territorial arrangements. The Sicilian faction within the Bonanno crime family maintained distinct operational methods while coordinating with established American crime families who provided territorial protection and political connections that were essential for large-scale drug distribution in major American cities. Communication between Sicily and America utilized coded language that incorporated Sicilian cultural references and dialects while avoiding specific drug trafficking terminology that might be understood by law enforcement surveillance operations. Monitoring international telephone communications. The use of public telephones, pre-arranged meeting locations, and trusted intermediaries provided additional communication security while enabling coordination of complex international trafficking operations that required precise timing and reliable information sharing. Money laundering operations utilized a sophisticated network of legitimate businesses, offshore banking relationships, and international wire transfers that moved drug proceeds between America, Switzerland, and Italy, while avoiding detection by banking authorities and law enforcement agencies. Swiss banking relationships provided crucial money laundering capabilities, while banking secrecy laws protected criminal proceeds from American and Italian law enforcement investigations that might have traced drug trafficking profits through conventional banking systems. The Rooney family's money laundering operations in New York demonstrated how legitimate financial businesses could be utilized for criminal purposes while maintaining operational security through established business relationships and professional credibility that avoided suspicious transaction reporting. International wire transfers between pizzerias and Swiss bank accounts created complex money trails that required sophisticated investigation techniques, while criminal organizations utilized multiple intermediary accounts and legitimate business transactions to obscure the criminal origins of transferred funds. Heroin supply operations connected Turkish opium producers with Sicilian processing facilities while maintaining quality control standards that enabled American distributors to command premium prices for consistently high-purity products that dominated East Coast heroin markets. The Sicilian laboratories that processed Turkish morphine base into heroin utilized sophisticated chemical techniques while maintaining operational security through remote locations and political protection that enabled large-scale drug processing without interference from Italian law enforcement. Distribution networks in America utilized established mafia territorial arrangements, while pizza restaurants served as distribution points for wholesale drug transactions that supplied other criminal organizations and street-level dealers who managed retail heroin sales. The coordination between wholesale and retail distribution required careful management of territorial boundaries, while criminal organizations maintained strict discipline through violence and intimidation that prevented competition and unauthorized drug sales within established territories. Violence enforcement included the systematic elimination of competitors and potential informants, while maintaining operational discipline through targeted assassinations that demonstrated the consequences of betraying family interests or cooperating with law enforcement investigations. The assassination of Carmine Galante in 1979 resulted from conflicts over drug trafficking territories and profits, while demonstrating how traditional mafia violence could be utilized to resolve business disputes and maintain organizational control over profitable criminal operations. Law enforcement penetration of the network required unprecedented international cooperation, while FBI, DEA, and Italian authorities coordinated surveillance operations, wiretaps, and financial investigations that ultimately revealed the scope and sophistication of the trafficking organization. The surveillance operations utilized advanced electronic monitoring techniques, while law enforcement agencies developed new investigative methods for tracking international criminal organizations that operated across multiple jurisdictions with sophisticated counter-surveillance capabilities. Wiretap evidence revealed the extent of criminal coordination, while recorded conversations provided insights into mafia organizational structures, decision-making processes, and operational security measures that protected trafficking networks from law enforcement penetration. Financial investigations traced money laundering operations through multiple countries, while banking cooperation enabled law enforcement agencies to follow complex financial transactions that revealed the scope and profitability of international drug trafficking operations. The Pizza Connection trial lasted from 1985 to 1987 and included testimony from over 200 witnesses, while prosecutors presented evidence of drug trafficking operations that connected Sicily, Turkey, Switzerland, and America through coordinated criminal activities. The convictions of 18 defendants demonstrated successful law enforcement cooperation, while revealing how traditional criminal organizations could adapt to modern international drug trafficking opportunities without abandoning cultural traditions and organizational structures that provided competitive advantages. Sentences ranging from 15 years to life imprisonment reflected the scope and severity of the trafficking operations, while demonstrating government commitment to prosecuting international drug trafficking organizations that threatened American communities and international security. The case established precedents for international law enforcement cooperation, while developing investigative techniques and legal procedures that would influence subsequent prosecutions of international criminal organizations involved in drug trafficking and money laundering. Asset forfeiture operations recovered millions of dollars in criminal proceeds, while demonstrating how law enforcement agencies could attack the financial foundations of criminal organizations through seizure of legitimate businesses and assets purchased with drug trafficking profits. The impact on Sicilian Mafia operations was substantial, as the Pizza Connection prosecutions eliminated key leadership figures while disrupting established trafficking networks and forcing organizational adaptations that reduced Sicilian influence over American heroin distribution. The case revealed how modern technology could be utilized for international criminal coordination, while demonstrating how traditional criminal organizations could adapt to contemporary communications and financial systems without abandoning fundamental organizational principles. Contemporary implications include ongoing influence on international drug trafficking prosecutions. While law enforcement agencies continue utilizing investigative techniques and international cooperation mechanisms developed during the Pizza Connection investigation, the organizational lessons learned from the Pizza Connection continue influencing both criminal organizations and law enforcement strategies, while providing insights into how cultural traditions and family structures enable international criminal cooperation across multiple generations. Understanding the Pizza Connection reveals how traditional criminal organizations could create sophisticated international networks while maintaining cultural identity and operational security that enabled sustained criminal success despite increasing law enforcement pressure and technological surveillance capabilities. Chapter 7. Cocaine Empire. The transformation of Sicilian Mafia operations from heroin to cocaine trafficking during the 1980s demonstrated their remarkable adaptability while establishing new international partnerships with Colombian cartels that would dominate global drug trafficking for the following decades through sophisticated smuggling networks and money laundering systems. The cocaine revolution began as American demand shifted from heroin to powder cocaine during the late 1970s and early 1980s, creating unprecedented market opportunities for criminal organizations that could establish reliable supply relationships with South American producers, while maintaining distribution capabilities in lucrative North American markets. Sicilian families recognized that cocaine trafficking offered significant advantages over heroin operations. Colombian suppliers could provide virtually unlimited quantities of high-quality product. Cocaine commanded premium prices in American markets, and the customer base included affluent professionals who were less likely to attract law enforcement attention. The Contreras Caruana family emerged as the dominant Sicilian organization in international cocaine trafficking through their Venezuelan connections and Swiss banking relationships, while maintaining traditional mafia organizational structures that enabled coordination with both Colombian suppliers and American distributors. Pasquale Contreras' leadership of cocaine operations demonstrated how traditional Sicilian bosses could adapt to new drug markets while maintaining family loyalty and operational security that protected international trafficking networks from law enforcement penetration and competitive threats. Venezuelan operations provided crucial transshipment capabilities as the Contrera Caruana organization established processing facilities and logistics networks that could manage large-scale cocaine shipments from Colombian producers to European and American consumption markets. The geographic advantages of Venezuela included extensive coastline, weak law enforcement capabilities, and political corruption that enabled criminal organizations to establish permanent operational bases for international cocaine trafficking without significant interference from government authorities. Money laundering operations through Venezuelan banks and legitimate businesses provided crucial financial services, while enabling criminal organizations to manage enormous cocaine profits through international banking relationships that protected criminal proceeds from law enforcement detection. Swiss banking relationships became even more important during the cocaine era as criminal proceeds exceeded anything achieved through heroin trafficking, while banking secrecy laws protected money laundering operations that moved billions of dollars through international financial systems. The Banco Ambrosiano scandal revealed extensive mafia involvement in international banking, while demonstrating how criminal organizations could exploit legitimate financial institutions for money laundering operations that protected drug trafficking proceeds through sophisticated financial manipulation. Roberto Calvi's murder in 1982 eliminated a key financial intermediary, while demonstrating how traditional mafia violence could be utilized to protect money laundering operations and prevent law enforcement agencies from accessing financial information that might compromise international drug trafficking networks. European cocaine markets provided additional opportunities for Sicilian families, as demand increased throughout Western Europe, while geographic proximity to North African and Middle Eastern transshipment routes enabled sophisticated smuggling operations that avoided American law enforcement pressure. The port of Gioia Tauro became a crucial cocaine entry point for European markets as Sicilian families utilized their traditional smuggling expertise while establishing relationships with 'Ndrangheta families who controlled Calabrian territories and provided additional operational security. Container shipping operations from South America utilized legitimate commercial relationships, while criminal organizations developed corruption networks with port officials, shipping companies, and customs authorities that enabled systematic cocaine trafficking through established Mediterranean trade routes. The coordination between Sicilian families and Colombian cartels required sophisticated negotiation and trust building, while both criminal organizations maintained distinct operational methods and territorial arrangements that prevented conflicts while maximizing mutual profits. Pablo Escobar's Medellin cartel maintained business relationships with Sicilian families, while recognizing their superior organizational discipline and international connections that provided access to European markets and money laundering capabilities that Colombian organizations could not replicate independently. The Cali cartel's more sophisticated business approach aligned better with traditional Sicilian organizational methods, while enabling sustained cooperation that combined Colombian production capabilities with Sicilian distribution networks and financial expertise. Violence coordination between Sicilian and Colombian criminal organizations enabled protection of international cocaine trafficking operations while eliminating competitors and maintaining discipline within trafficking networks that required absolute loyalty and operational security. The systematic elimination of potential informants and law enforcement threats required international coordination, while demonstrating how traditional mafia violence capabilities could be adapted for protecting contemporary international drug trafficking operations. Communication security between Sicily, Venezuela, Colombia, and other operational locations utilized sophisticated encryption and coded language while maintaining operational security that protected trafficking networks from electronic surveillance and law enforcement penetration. Technology adaptation enabled criminal organizations to utilize satellite communications, encrypted telecommunications, and computer networks while maintaining traditional organizational structures and cultural practices that provided operational security and family loyalty. Law enforcement response to Sicilian cocaine operations included enhanced international cooperation, while Italian authorities implemented specialized anti-mafia legislation that provided new investigative tools for prosecuting international criminal organizations. The Maxi trial of the 1980s prosecuted hundreds of Sicilian Mafia members while revealing the scope of international drug trafficking operations and demonstrating government commitment to dismantling traditional criminal organizations that had dominated Sicilian society for over a century. Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino's investigative work revealed extensive details about mafia organizational structures while developing new techniques for penetrating criminal organizations that had previously operated with complete immunity from law enforcement interference. The assassinations of Falcone and Borsellino in 1992 demonstrated the extent of mafia resistance to law enforcement pressure, while revealing how traditional criminal organizations would utilize extreme violence to protect operational security and maintain territorial control. The aftermath of the assassinations included unprecedented government response, while Italian authorities implemented emergency legislation and military operations that severely disrupted Sicilian mafia operations and forced organizational adaptations to survive enhanced law enforcement pressure. Contemporary Sicilian involvement in international cocaine trafficking continues through modified organizational structures while maintaining cultural traditions and family relationships that enable ongoing criminal cooperation with South American producers and European distributors. The adaptation to modern law enforcement pressure includes enhanced operational security, compartmentalized organizational structures, and sophisticated counter-surveillance capabilities, while maintaining essential mafia cultural traditions that provide competitive advantages over other criminal organizations. International partnerships with contemporary criminal organizations include ongoing relationships with Colombian cartels, Mexican trafficking groups, and African criminal networks, while Sicilian families provide organizational expertise and European market access. The legacy of Sicilian cocaine operations influences contemporary international drug trafficking, while demonstrating how traditional criminal organizations can adapt to changing market conditions and law enforcement pressure without abandoning fundamental organizational principles and cultural traditions. Understanding Sicilian cocaine operations reveals how traditional criminal organizations could evolve to exploit new market opportunities while maintaining competitive advantages through organizational discipline, international connections, and cultural traditions that enabled sustained criminal success across multiple generations and technological developments. Chapter 8. Blood Wars. The Sicilian Mafia Wars of the 1980s and early 1990s represented the bloodiest period in organized crime history, as competing families fought for control over drug trafficking territories and profits through systematic assassination campaigns that killed over 1,000 people, while fundamentally restructuring Sicilian criminal organizations. The Second Mafia War began in 1981, when Salvatore Riina's Corleonesi family challenged the established territorial arrangements that had maintained relative peace between Sicilian families since the 1960s, while implementing a systematic campaign to eliminate rival bosses and consolidate control over international drug trafficking operations. Riina's strategic vision involved eliminating the traditional commission system that had coordinated activities between autonomous mafia families while replacing collegial decision-making with centralized control that would enable more efficient management of lucrative drug trafficking operations. The Corleonesi's rural origins provided advantages in the violent struggle for supremacy, as their family members were considered more ruthless and disciplined than urban Palermo families who had grown comfortable with established territorial arrangements and steady criminal revenues. Stefano Bontardi's leadership of the Santa Maria di Gesù family represented the traditional Palermo establishment that favored continued cooperation between families while maintaining existing territorial boundaries and profit-sharing arrangements that had enabled sustained criminal success. The conflict between Riina and Bontard represented fundamental disagreements about organizational structure and strategic direction, while both leaders recognized that control over international drug trafficking would determine the future of Sicilian organized crime. The assassination of Stefano Bontardi in April 1981 marked the beginning of open warfare, while demonstrating Riena's commitment to eliminating established family leaders who might oppose Corleonese expansion and organizational restructuring. Salvatore Inzerillo's death in May 1981 eliminated another prominent Palermo boss, while severing crucial connections between Sicilian families and American organized crime that had enabled international drug trafficking operations for over 30 years. The systematic elimination of rival family leaders included their relatives, associates, and supporters, while the Corleonesi demonstrated that traditional mafia rules protecting family members would not limit their campaign for organizational control. Women and children became targets for the first time in mafia history, as the Corleonesi abandoned traditional codes that had protected non-combatants while implementing total warfare strategies that terrorized rival families into submission or elimination. The scale of violence exceeded anything previously experienced in Sicilian organized crime, as assassination campaigns eliminated entire family leadership structures while forcing survivors to choose between submission to Corleonese authority or continued resistance that would likely result in death. Bernardo Provenzano's role as Riena's military commander enabled systematic coordination of assassination campaigns while maintaining operational security that protected Corleonese leadership from law enforcement detection and rival family retaliation. The use of sophisticated weapons, including explosives, automatic weapons, and coordinated team assassinations, demonstrated how traditional mafia violence evolved to meet the requirements of systematic warfare between well-armed and disciplined criminal organizations. Lupara Bianca, making people disappear without leaving traces, became the preferred execution method while preventing law enforcement investigations and eliminating evidence that might compromise ongoing criminal operations or reveal organizational information. The dissolution of bodies in acid and other sophisticated disposal methods demonstrated how traditional criminal organizations adapted modern techniques for eliminating evidence while maintaining operational security that protected family members from prosecution. International implications of the mafia wars included disruption of established drug trafficking networks, while American law enforcement agencies exploited the chaos to penetrate Sicilian organizations and gather intelligence about international criminal operations. The collaboration between surviving family members and law enforcement agencies provided unprecedented insights into mafia organizational structures, while informants revealed operational details that had previously been protected by omertà and family loyalty. Tommaso Buscetta's decision to become an informant represented a fundamental breakdown in traditional mafia culture, while providing Italian and American prosecutors with detailed information about international drug trafficking operations and organizational structures. Buscetta's testimony during the Maxi trial revealed extensive details about commission operations, territorial arrangements, and decision-making processes, while demonstrating how law enforcement agencies could exploit internal conflicts to penetrate previously impenetrable criminal organizations. The Pizza Connection prosecutions benefited from intelligence gathered during the Mafia Wars, while American authorities utilized informant information to understand international trafficking networks and coordination mechanisms between Sicilian and American criminal organizations. Law enforcement exploitation of mafia internal conflicts demonstrated how criminal violence could create opportunities for investigation and prosecution, while traditional organizational security measures became less effective during periods of internal warfare and leadership instability. The government response to escalating violence included military deployment and emergency legislation, while Italian authorities recognized that traditional law enforcement methods were inadequate for addressing systematic criminal warfare that threatened state authority. Operation Vespri Siciliani deployed thousands of soldiers and police officers throughout Sicily, while implementing martial law conditions that restricted movement and enabled mass arrests of suspected mafia members and associates. The anti-mafia pool created specialized prosecution units while coordinating investigative efforts between different law enforcement agencies that had previously operated independently with limited success against sophisticated criminal organizations. Giovanni Falcone's innovative investigative methods included financial analysis, international cooperation, and sophisticated surveillance techniques, while developing new approaches for understanding and prosecuting complex international criminal organizations. Paolo Borsellino's prosecutorial strategies emphasized turning family members against each other while exploiting internal conflicts and personal grievances that could motivate cooperation with law enforcement authorities. The assassination of Falcone and Borsellino in 1992 represented the mafia's response to effective law enforcement pressure, while demonstrating their continued willingness to utilize extreme violence against government officials who threatened their operations. The public response to the assassinations created unprecedented anti-mafia sentiment, while Italian citizens demanded government action that would eliminate criminal organizations that had terrorized Sicily and corrupted Italian institutions for over a century. Gaetano Riina's arrest in 1993 ended his 23-year period as a fugitive, while demonstrating that even the most sophisticated criminal leaders could eventually be captured through sustained law enforcement pressure and improved investigative techniques. The aftermath of the Blood Wars included fundamental changes in Sicilian Mafia operations, while surviving families adopted lower profiles and modified organizational structures that could avoid the law enforcement attention that had resulted from excessive violence and public confrontation. Bernardo Provenzano's leadership of the post-war Corleonesi emphasized submersion, avoiding public attention and government confrontation, while maintaining profitable criminal operations through corruption and intimidation rather than spectacular violence. Contemporary implications of the Blood Wars include ongoing organizational adaptations, while Sicilian families continue operating international criminal networks with reduced public profiles and enhanced operational security that reflects lessons learned from the destructive conflicts of the 1980s. Understanding the Blood Wars reveals how internal conflicts can fundamentally reshape criminal organizations, while demonstrating the relationship between criminal violence and organizational evolution that enables sustained adaptation to changing law enforcement pressure and competitive conditions. Chapter 9: Modern Evolution. The contemporary Sicilian Mafia has evolved into a sophisticated transnational criminal organization that operates globally while maintaining traditional organizational structures and cultural codes that enable sustained criminal success despite decades of law enforcement pressure and technological surveillance capabilities that have eliminated many competing criminal organizations. The transformation following the Blood Wars of the 1980s and 1990s included strategic adaptations that reduced public visibility while maintaining profitable criminal operations through systematic corruption, legitimate business infiltration, and international criminal partnerships that generate billions in annual revenues. Bernardo Provenzano's leadership philosophy of submersion fundamentally changed Sicilian Mafia operations while emphasizing corruption over violence, legitimate business infiltration over territorial control, and political influence over public confrontation with government authorities. The strategy of remaining invisible enabled Sicilian families to avoid the law enforcement attention that had decimated their organizations during the 1980s, while maintaining operational capabilities through sophisticated business networks and political relationships. Contemporary organizational structures maintain traditional family hierarchies while adapting to modern law enforcement surveillance through compartmentalized operations, encrypted communications, and sophisticated counterintelligence capabilities that protect operational security. Digital communications security utilizes advanced encryption technologies while maintaining traditional operational security through personal relationships and cultural codes that provide protection against electronic surveillance and law enforcement penetration. Legitimate business infiltration has become the primary focus for contemporary Sicilian Mafia operations, as families invest drug trafficking proceeds in construction, renewable energy, waste management, and agricultural enterprises that provide sustainable revenue streams and political influence. Wind farms and solar energy projects provide opportunities for EU subsidy fraud, while legitimate energy businesses enable money laundering operations that convert criminal proceeds into apparently legitimate business assets that can be inherited across generations. Construction companies enable systematic control over public works projects, while providing opportunities for bid rigging, corruption, and money laundering through inflated contracts and overpriced materials that generate enormous profits through systematic fraud. Waste management operations provide opportunities for environmental crimes, including illegal dumping and toxic waste disposal, while legitimate waste companies enable control over municipal contracts and systematic corruption of local government officials. Agricultural enterprises, including olive groves and wineries, provide legitimate business fronts, while enabling money laundering operations and systematic control over EU agricultural subsidies that generate substantial revenues through fraudulent claims and documentation. International drug trafficking continues through modified operational structures, while Sicilian families maintain coordination with South American cartels, African trafficking networks, and European criminal organizations that require Sicilian expertise and European market access. Cocaine trafficking from South America utilizes sophisticated smuggling networks while maintaining traditional Sicilian organizational discipline and operational security that provides competitive advantages over less sophisticated criminal organizations. Synthetic drug production in Europe provides new opportunities, while Sicilian families coordinate with Eastern European criminal organizations that provide manufacturing capabilities and chemical supplies for methamphetamine and synthetic opioid production. Money laundering operations have achieved unprecedented sophistication through international banking relationships, while utilizing legitimate businesses, offshore corporations, and cryptocurrency exchanges that enable conversion of criminal proceeds into legitimate assets. Cryptocurrency adoption provides new money laundering opportunities, while enabling anonymous international transfers and investment in digital assets that can be accessed globally without traditional banking system monitoring and reporting requirements. Real estate investments in major European cities enable money laundering while providing legitimate assets that appreciate in value and generate rental income that appears unrelated to criminal activities, requiring no explanation of fund sources. Political corruption remains essential for contemporary operations, while Sicilian families maintain relationships with local and national politicians who provide regulatory protection and advance warning of law enforcement investigations. EU funding fraud provides enormous opportunities for systematic theft, while legitimate businesses enable access to development grants, agricultural subsidies, and infrastructure funding that can be diverted through inflated costs and fraudulent documentation. Public works corruption enables systematic control over government contracts while providing opportunities for bid rigging and project manipulation that generate guaranteed profits through political relationships and intimidation of competitors. International cooperation with other criminal organizations includes ongoing relationships with 'Ndrangheta families, Camorra groups, and Albanian criminal networks, while maintaining distinct organizational identity and operational methods. The coordination with 'Ndrangheta families enables systematic division of criminal territories, while both organizations maintain traditional structures and cultural practices that provide operational security and competitive advantages over newer criminal groups. Collaboration with Eastern European criminal organizations provides access to human trafficking, cybercrime capabilities, and synthetic drug production, while Sicilian families provide money laundering expertise and European market access. Law enforcement adaptation includes enhanced surveillance technologies, while Sicilian families develop counter-surveillance capabilities and operational security measures that enable continued criminal operations despite advanced investigative techniques. Digital forensics and electronic surveillance create new challenges, while criminal organizations adapt through sophisticated encryption, compartmentalized communications, and traditional operational security that limits electronic evidence and protects organizational structures. Financial intelligence capabilities enable law enforcement agencies to trace money laundering operations, while criminal organizations develop sophisticated financial techniques that obscure criminal proceeds through complex international transactions. Contemporary prosecutions continue targeting Sicilian Mafia operations while demonstrating ongoing organizational resilience and adaptation that enables continued criminal success despite sustained law enforcement pressure and international cooperation. Asset forfeiture operations recover billions in criminal proceeds while demonstrating government commitment to attacking the financial foundations of criminal organizations that continue generating enormous profits through diverse criminal activities. The younger generation of Sicilian mafiosi demonstrates continued commitment to traditional organizational values while adapting to contemporary challenges, including digital surveillance, international cooperation, and enhanced law enforcement capabilities. Educational achievements and legitimate business experience enable younger family members to operate sophisticated business networks while maintaining traditional criminal loyalty and organizational discipline that provides competitive advantages. International expansion includes operations throughout Europe, North America, and South America, while maintaining Sicilian identity and organizational structures that enable coordination across multiple jurisdictions and cultural environments. The global reach of contemporary Sicilian mafia operations demonstrates how traditional criminal organizations can adapt to modern conditions while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that provide sustained competitive advantages. Understanding modern evolution reveals how traditional criminal organizations achieve long-term survival through strategic adaptation while maintaining essential features that enable continued criminal success across multiple generations and technological developments. The contemporary Sicilian Mafia represents one of the most successful organizational adaptations in criminal history, while demonstrating how cultural traditions and institutional structures can enable sustained criminal enterprises that outlast governments and technological revolutions. Chapter 10: Global Legacy. The global influence of Sicilian Mafia organizational methods extends far beyond Sicily itself, as criminal organizations worldwide have adopted mafia structures, operational techniques, and cultural practices that originated in Western Sicily over 150 years ago, while adapting these methods to local conditions and contemporary criminal opportunities. Japanese Yakuza organizations demonstrate clear Sicilian influence through hierarchical family structures, honor codes, territorial arrangements, and initiation rituals that create organizational loyalty and operational security while maintaining distinct Japanese cultural elements and business practices. The Yakuza adoption of family-based organization structures reflects Sicilian influence, while Japanese cultural traditions of loyalty, honor, and group solidarity provided compatible foundations for criminal organizations that required sustained cooperation and internal discipline. Russian organized crime groups utilized Sicilian organizational models following the Soviet collapse, while adapting family structures to Russian cultural conditions and establishing territorial control systems that reflected traditional mafia methods for managing criminal territories and business relationships. The Vor v Zakon, Thieves in Law, honor code demonstrates Sicilian influence while incorporating Russian prison culture and criminal traditions that created powerful organizational bonds and behavioral standards for criminal cooperation and territorial management. Chinese triads maintain organizational structures that predate Sicilian mafia development, while contemporary operations demonstrate clear Sicilian influence through territorial arrangements, corruption networks, and international criminal cooperation that enables global drug trafficking operations. The adaptation of Sicilian methods by Asian criminal organizations demonstrates how traditional organizational structures can transcend cultural boundaries while providing effective frameworks for international criminal cooperation and sustained organizational development. Colombian cartels during their peak period utilized organizational techniques clearly derived from Sicilian models while adapting family structures, violence management, and corruption networks to Colombian political conditions and South American criminal opportunities. The Medellin and Cali cartels' different organizational approaches reflected varying degrees of Sicilian influence, while both organizations demonstrated how traditional mafia methods could be adapted for contemporary drug trafficking and international criminal operations. Mexican criminal organizations continue utilizing Sicilian-influenced organizational structures while adapting traditional methods to North American criminal opportunities and contemporary law enforcement challenges that require sophisticated operational security and international cooperation. The evolution of Mexican cartels from drug trafficking organizations into diversified criminal enterprises reflects Sicilian influence, while demonstrating how traditional criminal methods can be adapted to contemporary conditions and expanded criminal opportunities. African criminal organizations increasingly demonstrate Sicilian influence through organizational structures and operational methods while adapting traditional techniques to African political conditions and emerging criminal opportunities in human trafficking and resource extraction. The expansion of Sicilian organizational methods to African criminal groups demonstrates global influence while showing how traditional criminal techniques can be adapted to diverse cultural conditions and criminal opportunities that require organizational discipline and international cooperation. Albanian criminal organizations operating throughout Europe explicitly model their structures on Sicilian organizations, while maintaining distinct cultural identity and operational methods that reflect Albanian traditions and contemporary European criminal opportunities. The Albanian adaptation of Sicilian methods includes family-based organization, honor codes, territorial control, and systematic violence, while demonstrating how traditional criminal structures can be modified for contemporary conditions and international operations. Eastern European criminal organizations utilize Sicilian-influenced structures while adapting to post-communist political conditions and emerging criminal opportunities that require international cooperation and sophisticated organizational capabilities. Contemporary international drug trafficking continues utilizing methods pioneered by Sicilian organizations, while modern criminal groups adapt traditional techniques to contemporary law enforcement challenges and technological surveillance capabilities. Digital age adaptations include sophisticated encryption and cybercrime capabilities, while maintaining traditional organizational structures and cultural practices that provide operational security and sustained criminal cooperation across international boundaries. Cryptocurrency and digital payment systems provide new opportunities for money laundering, while criminal organizations utilize traditional Sicilian techniques for legitimate business infiltration and political corruption that enables protection of digital criminal operations. International law enforcement cooperation has increased significantly, while criminal organizations adapt through enhanced operational security and international coordination that reflects traditional Sicilian methods for avoiding law enforcement detection and prosecution. The ongoing influence of Sicilian methods on contemporary international crime demonstrates how organizational innovations can achieve lasting influence, while traditional techniques continue providing competitive advantages for criminal organizations operating in diverse cultural and political environments. Academic research on organized crime consistently identifies Sicilian influence on international criminal organizations, while demonstrating how traditional methods for organizational development and operational security continue influencing contemporary criminal enterprises. Law enforcement training programs worldwide include extensive study of Sicilian organizational methods, while recognizing that understanding traditional criminal structures is essential for investigating contemporary international criminal organizations. Popular culture representations of organized crime consistently emphasize Sicilian influence, while movies, television, and literature reinforce global recognition of mafia organizational methods and cultural practices that originated in Western Sicily. The romanticization of Sicilian criminal culture through media representations influences contemporary criminal organizations while providing cultural models that enhance organizational identity and operational legitimacy for criminal enterprises worldwide. Government responses to organized crime consistently reference Sicilian models, while anti-mafia legislation and investigative techniques developed for Sicilian organizations influence law enforcement approaches to international criminal groups that utilize similar organizational methods. The economic impact of Sicilian-influenced criminal organizations affects global commerce, while legitimate businesses must contend with criminal competition, corruption pressures, and security threats that reflect traditional mafia methods for territorial control and business infiltration. International business communities recognize Sicilian criminal influence through risk assessment and security planning that addresses organized crime threats utilizing traditional mafia methods for extortion, intimidation, and territorial control. Political systems worldwide must address Sicilian-influenced criminal organizations while developing governance structures that can resist corruption and provide security against criminal groups that utilize traditional mafia methods for political influence and protection. The democratic implications of Sicilian-influenced organized crime include ongoing threats to political institutions, while criminal organizations utilize traditional methods for corruption and intimidation that can undermine legitimate governance and electoral processes. Contemporary global security challenges include Sicilian-influenced criminal organizations that operate internationally while utilizing traditional methods for operational security and international cooperation that enable sustained criminal enterprises across multiple jurisdictions. The future of international organized crime will continue reflecting Sicilian influence, while traditional organizational methods and cultural practices provide ongoing competitive advantages for criminal enterprises that can adapt to changing law enforcement and technological conditions. Understanding global legacy reveals how organizational innovations can achieve lasting international influence, while traditional criminal methods continue providing effective frameworks for contemporary criminal enterprises that operate across cultural boundaries and technological developments. The enduring influence of Sicilian organizational methods demonstrates how cultural innovations can transcend their origins while providing sustainable competitive advantages for organizations that can maintain traditional structures while adapting to contemporary challenges and opportunities. The global legacy of Sicilian Mafia organizational methods represents one of the most successful institutional innovations in criminal history, while demonstrating how traditional structures can provide lasting advantages for organizations that face sustained opposition and technological change. When you examine the complete arc of the Sicilian Mafia's 100-year drug empire, you're witnessing one of the most successful criminal transformations in human history, where feudal protection rackets evolved into sophisticated multinational enterprises that have generated over $500 billion in profits, while outlasting governments, surviving world wars, and adapting to every technological revolution. The scale of their achievement defies conventional understanding of organizational development. Starting as rural bandits in western Sicily during the 1870s, they created criminal institutions that dominated global drug trafficking for over a century, while maintaining cultural traditions and organizational structures that enabled sustained success across 4 generations. Their drug empire wasn't built through random violence or crude intimidation. It was constructed systematically through sophisticated business strategies, international networking, and institutional innovations that rival any legitimate multinational corporation. They created the template for modern international organized crime. The numbers tell an extraordinary story. During their peak years, Sicilian families controlled 80% of heroin entering the United States, while managing trafficking networks that spanned 5 continents. They pioneered money laundering techniques that moved billions through international banking systems, while corrupting officials at every level of government. But the real achievement was organizational, creating criminal institutions that could adapt to changing conditions while maintaining essential characteristics that enabled sustained competitive advantages. They survived fascist repression, Allied occupation, Italian democratization, and modern law enforcement while continuously evolving their operations. The French Connection, Pizza Connection, and cocaine trafficking networks demonstrated their ability to adapt traditional organizational structures for contemporary criminal opportunities, while maintaining family loyalty and operational security that protected international operations from law enforcement penetration. Their influence extends far beyond drug trafficking. Sicilian organizational methods have been adopted by criminal organizations worldwide, from Japanese Yakuza to Russian organized crime, from Colombian cartels to Mexican trafficking groups. They created the organizational DNA for modern international crime. The cultural innovations were as important as the criminal ones. Omertà, family honor codes, territorial arrangements, and commission-style coordination provided organizational frameworks that enabled sustained criminal cooperation while maintaining operational security against law enforcement infiltration. Their political influence was equally sophisticated. Through systematic corruption, they neutralized law enforcement pressure while influencing governmental policies that affected their operations. They proved that criminal organizations could achieve political influence that rivals legitimate business interests. The violence was strategic rather than random. They eliminated competitors and enforced discipline through calculated assassinations while demonstrating how traditional honor codes could be weaponized for criminal advantage. Violence became a business tool rather than emotional expression. The blood wars of the 1980s demonstrated both their capacity for internal destruction and their ability to emerge stronger through organizational evolution. The elimination of hundreds of competitors consolidated power while forcing adaptations that enhanced their international capabilities. Modern evolution has made them even more dangerous. Contemporary Sicilian families operate globally while maintaining lower profiles that avoid law enforcement attention. They've learned to exercise power through legitimate businesses and political corruption rather than spectacular violence. Their infiltration of legitimate businesses represents perhaps their greatest contemporary achievement. Wind farms, construction companies, waste management and agricultural enterprises provide sustainable revenue streams while enabling money laundering operations that convert criminal proceeds into generational wealth. The European Union has provided unprecedented opportunities for systematic fraud, while legitimate businesses enable access to development grants and infrastructure funding that can be diverted through political corruption and fraudulent documentation. Their adaptation to digital age challenges demonstrates continued organizational evolution. While law enforcement agencies utilize sophisticated surveillance technologies, Sicilian families develop counter-surveillance capabilities and operational security measures that enable continued criminal success. Contemporary international partnerships with Colombian cartels, African trafficking networks, and Eastern European criminal organizations demonstrate how traditional Sicilian families continue influencing global criminal development while maintaining distinct organizational identity. The generational transition continues successfully as younger family members combine traditional criminal loyalty with contemporary business education and technological sophistication. They represent criminal aristocracy that spans multiple generations of sustained success. Perhaps most disturbing is their institutional resilience. Despite decades of prosecutions, thousands of arrests, and billions in asset forfeitures, Sicilian families continue operating profitable international criminal enterprises while adapting to every challenge that law enforcement agencies present. Their success reveals fundamental weaknesses in legitimate institutions. They've demonstrated how criminal organizations can exploit democratic vulnerabilities while providing alternative governance structures that can compete with official governmental authority. The corruption of political institutions, law enforcement agencies, and business communities demonstrates how criminal influence can penetrate legitimate society while maintaining operational capabilities that enable sustained criminal success across multiple generations. Their money laundering innovations have influenced global finance while legitimate banking institutions continue utilizing techniques that were pioneered for criminal purposes. The boundary between legitimate and criminal finance has become increasingly blurred. The geographic expansion of their influence demonstrates how traditional criminal organizations can achieve global reach